Welcome to my home. This is Wendy Rodrigue, and you are visiting me here in the home I share with my wonderful husband, Douglas Magnus. This is actually the old cemetery keeper's house for the oldest Our Lady of Guadalupe cemetery in the country. Can you believe it? They used to have funerals in this room. In fact, I forgot we actually have a little Our Lady of Guadalupe right here. Kind of start us off on this little presentation of women. I'm thinking about mothers today. You probably are too. I'm thinking mostly about my mother for obvious reasons. And so many of you have shown an interest in her paintings recently, which has really excited me, and my sister as well. I've been posting them on Facebook and Instagram, and the comments and reactions have just been magical. She would have loved it. I wish you could see them. So I thought I'd share a few more with you today in honor of Mother's Day, which is this weekend. So let's make a little tour around this wall. Some of these are by my mother and some are by other folks, but related, I thought, to women, so you'll see why. We'll begin with this wonderful painting by my mom that so many of you fell in love with when I posted. It's her Blue Angel of 1996. Just magnificent. And just below her Blue Angel is a little forest that she did around the same period. My mother very vocally believed in fairies and angels, and she believed that the fairies lived in the forest. This was from a forest scene outside of a little cottage she lived in for a time in Highlands, North Carolina, painted in 1996. To the right of this painting, we have a painting that was done by a young man named Jacob Broussard. He is an artist who was one of the first winners of the George Rodrigue Foundation of the Arts Scholarship Art Contest. George and I were really thrilled for him. What an incredibly talented artist. And he did this portrait for me in 2014 of my grandmother on the left there, Helen Cannon McClanahan, and my mother, Mignon McClanahan Wolfe. This usually hangs in my bedroom, but I might leave it here for a while. Love looking at them. Look him up on Instagram, by the way. Pretty incredible. Jacob Broussard. And above that painting, we have, appropriately, A Mother and Child by the great Grande Dame de Santa Fe, Rosalea Murphy. And on the back of this painting, in fact, it is dated 1981. So very early, fabulous Mother and Child. This is actually from Douglas's collection. Really thrilled to have this. And the painting above it is also by Rosalea. Another really fabulous. I think you can tell she was very influenced. Paul Klee, I think, was one of her greatest influences, and she was one of a kind, though, of course, too. Very drawn to the Cubist movement also. And then to the left of the Rosalea paintings, we have a wonderful landscape by my husband, Douglas Magnus. And George and I have owned this painting for many years. Gosh, now it may be as long as 20 or more years. And it hung in our home in California in our little sitting area. We loved it there because it made us think of the wonderful land of enchantment. For those of you who don't know, that's what we call New Mexico. And I just learned this week that that happens to be the first painting that Douglas ever did on plein air, that he painted outside. And he actually painted it out there at the Turquoise Hills before he even owned the turquoise mines in that beautiful area of land, 1985 or so. So nice to bring it back home. So what else do we have? This is a wonderful painting by Douglas Magnus. He painted it last year. We were visiting Homus House Plantation and Gardens on River Road in Louisiana. If you haven't been there, please go. And I don't know if the gardens are open yet, but if they are, they've got to be blooming and just magnificent right now. Go check it out. You'll see this magnificent tree, the pond with the swans, the Rodin-like thinker off in the grass. Say hi to my friend Kevin Kelly, the steward and caretaker and owner of these fabulous properties. And to the right of that, we have a wonderful piece by George Rodrigue, of course. This is a painting he gave me some years ago. He painted it in 2011, and I just flipped over it. So he hung it in my office, and I did say we were paying tribute to women today. Well, there is a certain romance I feel about this painting, not only because it was a gift, but because of the title, Reflections of a Hot Night. So I'll leave that interpretation to you. And finally, what I consider to be really the showpiece of our visit today. You're the first really to see it because it hung in my mother's home and then in my home, and I haven't shown it. It's so wonderful. Her Stonehenge, of course. She used real silver and gold leaf applications on this. You can really see them in the moon and then throughout the sky and stars and throughout the path to Stonehenge. Stonehenge, one of the great, mysteries of all times, right? And it wasn't until my mother pointed it out to me that I saw that in this particular stone, she ghosted in lovers. You can see the man standing here, his head and face and his body, and the woman here, facing each other in love. And in this one, my mother lost her father when she was very young. She always talked about her father as, of course, one of the great loves of her life. And she always missed him and had a very close bond with him. So she has ghosted him into this. Here's his hair, his face. You can see his nose. My mother, Mignon, painted in 1992. And with that, this is my mother. Her story, which of everything I wrote ever, I probably received the most comments on. So I'm really thrilled to read it to you today because even though many people have read it, I have never read it aloud. Mignon McClanahan Wolfe, born 1940, grew up in Algiers, a New Orleans neighborhood on the west bank of the Mississippi River. As an adult, she lived in South Carolina, Delaware, the Orient, and Europe, raised her children on the beaches of North Florida's Gulf Coast, made a lengthy artistic pilgrimage to Highlands, North Carolina, and returned home in 2003 to a jewel box Acadian house in beautiful Abita Springs, Louisiana. Her parents named her Felix because they wanted a boy. And the day my mother turned 18 and received a draft notice, she changed her name to Mignon. I'm named after a French actress, she used to say. She was a chemistry major at Louisiana State University when her ponytail flipped onto her Bunsen burner, catching her hair on fire. And she gained fame as the first LSU student to use the lab shower when her experiment exploded, disintegrating her clothes and burning her skin to the bone. This prompted her switch to the safe major of fine arts, despite the fact that she had never held a paintbrush in her life. She was the kind of person who named her clothes the mermaid outfit, the Maryland dress, and the Renaissance blouse. Today, by the way, I'm wearing my Frida beads. Her tooled leather belts read Mignon amidst roses and bluebonnets. Her turquoise and purple jazz class leotards matched her frilly skirts, and she prided herself on the way her heart-shaped behind looked in her Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. She wore flowers in her hair, bows on her sandals, and rhinestones on her fingernails, and I wanted to be exactly like her. She was single from the time I was 6 years old, and her dating life was a regular part of the drama around our house. There was Captain Knapp the pilot. Oh, how I wanted her to marry him. Russ the psychiatrist, Tom the sailor, Bob the lieutenant colonel, Mike who drove the monster truck and carried a step stool in the back just for her, Pete the brown noser, always buying my sister and me records and dresses, and I guess that's a long enough list lest I tarnish her reputation. She listened to Don Williams, Charlie Rich, and Donna Summer as she brushed her long blonde hair. And, once dressed, she played Vincent at the piano, meant to impress her dates as they approached the door. Once I reached dating age, we met for late-night horror movies in her bedroom, sharing the details of our dates on commercials during The Fly as we squirmed together. Help me! Help me! The Night of the Living Dead, or The Raven. We laughed despite the plot lines as she reminisced about the rather repulsive but very beloved Morgus the Magnificent, while awaiting our current hostess, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark's imminent wardrobe malfunction. She wanted to be tall and thin, but instead she stood 5 feet 4 inches and struggled with her weight all of her life. Rarely was she as disappointed in me as when I slouched. At 5 feet 10 inches in the 10th grade, I fought my mother with what I saw as an awkward, freakish height. Yet she convinced me to parade around our house in her heels, a book and glass balanced atop my head. She was immensely clever and generous in all things. She couldn't type or sew, yet she plucked out my school papers on a typewriter from a board over her bathroom sink, lest typing from the dining room wake me or my sister. And, like magic, my Girl Scout patches appeared on my sash within days after I earned them. When I called my mother at work crying because a wounded bird lay beneath a bush at my school bus stop, she canceled her appointments and raced home. I found the bird after school, nestled in a towel in the corner of her bathtub, where it remained for several weeks until it flew through the living room and out of our window. And when she went into the hospital with pain in her hip, she took me aside before her x-ray and said that if she didn't make it, I should find Chesley Adler, whom she knew from Chesley's father's jewelry store, Adler's Jewelry, for those of you who might know, where my mother worked. And I needed to tell Chesley that her jewelry designs are beautiful and that my mother believes in her talent and in her potential. And so I did. Today I write about my mother often and with appropriate colorful detail because I owe it to her and because I should have written about her when she could read it and because the therapy and psychics and meditation just made me hope for closure and because I should have taken her to Ireland and Egypt and because I dismissed her discomfort as routine and because I didn't question the doctors and because I mocked her belief in fairies and angels and UFOs, and because I rolled my eyes behind her back over something stupid that last week, and because, as my sweet sister managed to choke out and yet state succinctly on the day of our mother's funeral, you know, Wendy, Mom was really neat. And because you too are invisible. And there's a chance that some of you, maybe all of you, knows exactly how I feel. There is a painting I found among my mother's things that I've never seen before. It's only 2 hands, painted in blue. It hangs in my closet, and sometimes I place my hands on hers, and I think she's there. This is my mother's glass from her wedding to my father in 1962. Happy Mother's Day, all you mothers out there, and all you daughters. Treasure your mama. I'll see you next time.